Good
So,
afternoon, and welcome to the Voice of Wisdom. With over 60 years of experience as an investment banker, entrepreneur, investment analyst, genius economist, venture capitalist, and political analyst and strategist, Morty Davis is Wall Street and capitalism personified. The over 400 companies for which he has raised more than $3 billion over the years have created a countless number of jobs and exciting new products. Through the Voice of Wisdom, Mr. Davis explores, analyzes, and debates the most topical political, economic, and social issues facing our world today. Joining Mr. Davis today for a discussion on his book, Happiness Guaranteed or Your Misery Back, is co-author Ruki Renov and inventor, entrepreneur, best-selling author, broadcaster, and publicist Barry Farber. And now, Mr. Davis, Ms. Renov, and Mr. Farber.
welcome back. It must be Wednesday, 6:30, and it's the best part of my week. Spending time with you all, my cohorts, who really make the program great, or at least try to make me a lot better than I might be. Your criticisms and your constructive input that you take the time to convey to me is fabulous. Even the most hurtful criticism is very useful because it gets me to think about things, reevaluate, and often change my mind, or at least buy into other people's views without being hypercritical. So you guys are the best, and that's why today's program, dealing with happiness more than with the events of the week, is so important to me, because I want to pay you all back and make you all a little happier, or hopefully a lot happier. That's the reason I wrote this book. I want to make every individual that comes across my path happier. I want to make every member of my family happier, every member of my community, every member of my state, my country, and hopefully every member, fellow man in this world, every other human being.
The good thing is nobody's against happiness. That's a change for us. Nobody's calling in with negatives.
I don't know about that. Stop being so happy. They'll tell me, what are you so happy about? The world's terrible. What are you? So don't say there's no criticism. But that's why I say, "Oh, your misery back." And at the end, at the bottom of you can see it. At the bottom of the page, it says, "How to be happy," of the cover. How to be happy no matter what. And I'm going to teach you how to be that way. I start every program trying to give you at least one idea before we get into all the negatives that the news inevitably entails. I once had a group that came to me with a business plan on a TV program or a series on happy events, only happy events. And I read the projections and what they thought they could do and so forth. The more I read it, the more boring the book got, because people are not interested in. You could never sell any newspapers or programs that talk about happiness or happy events, because it's just not thrilling enough. Not when I was a little younger, hard to remember them days. My youngest daughter, I had four daughters. My youngest daughter was 4 years old, and at a Friday evening on the Sabbath dinner, we always spend time talking to each other. If we're not screaming at each other, we're talking to each other. I was telling some gossip, And she says to me, Daddy, you're not allowed to do that. I said, do what? She says, gossip. I said, why not? She says, that's Lashon Hara. That's bad talk. Lashon is the talk. So I wanted to straighten her out at 4 years old. I said, Leah, remember this for the rest of your life. If it's not Lashon Hara, if it's not
Slander.
something, what?
Slander.
Yeah, if it's not slander and anyway, I can't think of the word, but slandering is good. If it's not bad news, if it's not news that depresses you, and I don't want to hear it because all the rest is boring. So since then, she never said anything about she just, instead of saying, don't speak Lashon Hara, she just says, don't speak. That covers everything. So my goal in writing this book is not to make myself happy or to sell more copies of my book. Every penny that comes in, I give, as is my habit. Any money that I make these days, and for years, I give to charitable, good charities, hospitals, schools, build schools, medical research, all the things that I hope will improve the lives of people throughout my community, my family, and throughout the world. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to one of my favorite people in the world, Barry Farber.
Thought he forgot about
No, I
you.
thought you were going to talk about you.
Barry Farber, a genius, is an artist, he's a writer, he's a painter, he's everything. I wish I had some of his talents. He's terrific.
I wish I had some of your talents. First of all, Morty and Ruki, thank you for having me, and I appreciate it. I can't even. The first thing that comes to mind when you talk about happiness guaranteed in your book, that's an encyclopedia of success. You can turn to any page and get so much knowledge from. I read through the whole thing. It was unbelievable. Is that 100 years ago, today we see more death and destruction and negative news in 5 minutes than people saw 100 years ago in a lifetime.
Right.
What's that impact on humans? I mean, I just find sometimes, we're glued to it because this happens, everything's breaking news. And I think what's great is this book and this focus today. I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for Mark Roberts. The day Mark Roberts, he loves you to death, just the greatest highlight of his life working with you. But I think of your attitude and how you just keep going. That's what I want to understand today. I want to understand your passion. You're writing books, you're doing shows, you're getting involved in things like this. I want to know what keeps you ticking. What motivates you? What keeps you going? Before we get into the book,
Okay.
Obviously you have a beautiful family. You have over 100 grandchildren, great grandchildren, which is just, when I tell that to people, they say, no, that's impossible.
This is my number 2 daughter. I have 4 daughters,
Right.
and over 100 children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren. And
he's only 48.
Congratulations.
and before my wife passed away about 3.5 years ago, she was sensational. She was the epitome of giving people happiness. Everybody looked up to her. She always fed them what they wanted to hear. She was uplifting all the time. Fabulous. And all my daughters are likewise giving, very charitable. She has more parties in her basement, but it's a big hall, enormous. And she hosts weddings, not even her weddings, for poor people.
My wedding.
And bar mitzvah, I meet people coming out of a basement, and I say, "Are you a relative of mine?" They said, "No." So I said, "What are you doing here?" They said, "Oh, we couldn't afford a different
Yeah. It's
location. You had to pay for it, So your daughter made this available to us.
Beautiful.
So the bride is there, the chassan's there, the bar mitzvah boy is there, the sweet 16 is there,
That's very nice.
and a lot every week she has some charity
Okay,
For-
let's talk about your book.
for people that can have children. She hosts for kids that aren't married and are looking for um, serious relationships.
But it takes courage to have happiness, I think. I want to throw that at you because I everybody thinks happiness is this, it's all the money, or it's having, this all the time, or, no stress. And
That's a good point, because people think of happiness as you take a drug and you're high, and that's the kind of happiness, but it's not real happiness. It's not lasting. It doesn't help the rest of the world be.
right.
If you're truly happy, you're going to spread happiness. And that's what I want from every one of my listeners, my cohorts. And I tell them, if you don't decide you're the boss and you're going to make yourself happy, because that's the key. You're the boss. You control what your mind thinks. I'm going to come over to your house. I'm going to get your address. I don't want to do that, but I'll make sure that you behave in a way that makes you happy. Incidentally, you mentioned it's one page for every day. 365 days. So it has all the ideas that I could ever discover. I'm sure there are more, but most of the ones that I found great over the years that
But
encourage.
most people who start reading it can't stop at one
Right,
page.
exactly.
It's really
No, it's
So-
addictive. It's great even if you don't. You can open to any page, which I like about it. That you can just read that part that day.
no, it gives great ideas how to be happy, what to do, how to work on yourself. Happiness is an attitude. That's my
That's
father's. That's the mantra. Really, you have to decide to be happy. The world is very tough. Everybody has problems. Everybody has issues. There's no one who escapes. If you're happy today, unfortunately, you weren't happy last year, or something might happen in the future. You have to really train yourself to be happy, and that's what my father wrote about. I added to it and I got involved, but he started with that. Teaching us that's it's an outlook.
Human life entails a lot of, unfortunately, tragedies, disappointments, failures, letdowns. Nobody goes through life unless they die at 2 or something without going through a lot of that. Even somebody who like the tennis matches are on now. They're in Florida next.
Miami Open, right? Yeah.
They're going to be in Paris, France next month. So it's the tournament starts with 132, I think, different players, right?
My wife's a big fan, and my son plays, so they'd have a number on that.
So 130
The 100
people,
start.
and the ones that get in are really the top players. So some people are really great players, but just not in the first 132, or they may be, but that week they're hurt or something. So 132 enter, and at the end, there's 131 that are, even though they got to the finals. I saw yesterday somebody got beat. Who was it? Oh, the Danish guy. Very good player. And he was crying at the end. They came in number 2. That's terrific. So here's a guy came in number 2 out of 132, and he was crying because there's only one winner.
But to him, he thinks.
No, but there's 131 losers.
There's a lot of losers that
No,
are
that's the way.
miserable.
Yeah.
God.
Well, I want to talk about in Happiness Guaranteed in your book. I wouldn't trade any failure, setback, obstacle I've had in my entire life for what they built as a foundation for future, actions and stuff. So talk about how, because your rags to riches story, what you did to build and all the odd jobs you had from vacuum cleaners to all the things you did for jobs, odd jobs you did,
Yeah.
and put your way in a scholarship
Okay.
through Harvard. And I just am amazed at what you've done. Over 400 companies, one of the first billionaires on Wall Street. Your passion for life is amazing. Let's talk about. I remember a quote. I think it was. I forgot Theocrates. It might be. I'm not pronouncing his name, but he says that the secret to happiness is freedom. The secret to freedom is courage. And I find out that the way that everybody's different, I think. That's what I was going to ask you in your book. Is there one way to be happy, or is there many ways? And I find that the pain that you suffer, or the difficulties or the obstacles, as you go through them, I find happiness in that. I know it sounds crazy, but I find that if I can deal with the pain or deal with the initial, setbacks and so forth, and start realizing that's part of life. That's how you grow. You don't grow any other way. You dive in, you do it, you learn. I find that's the most rewarding, because once people accept that they can deal with adversity, like I said, Mark Roberts is a mentor of mine. Well, I've never seen anybody go through more adversity in my life. I mean, people would jump off buildings for doing what he's done, and he still has. Now he's the
People
most.
don't know who Mark Roberts is.
Mark Roberts is, one of the biggest real estate developers. I mean, he was the youngest boxing promoter ever in the history. He brought his company public, the only person ever bring his company public with you, right? I mean, he literally...
He was the only person that brought his company public with me. I took over 400.
No. I mean,
nobody else is
What?
Sports.
No, at a very young age.
Yeah.
He walked in,
Mm-hmm.
and I liked him, and he had so much energy, and
Mm-hmm.
I had no business funding him, but it was his personality, not his business plan.
Right.
And he's turned out to be
His work ethic.
a super winner.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody loves him.
But I say that adversity
And
sometimes...
he's a party animal. So wherever he goes,
yes,
there's
I can't
happiness.
keep up with Mark.
Right.
I can't keep up. But I'm just...
Not sometimes. If you handle adversity right, you grow from it.
Absolutely.
You could either be destroyed by it or you grow from it.
That's
Right.
a good point. You
Yep.
learn. So nobody had a worse beginning than I had. I was very poor. In those days, there was no welfare. There was no food stamps. There was something that was started called relief. And Jewish people wouldn't even go it. They were too proud, too embarrassed to even reach out to the government to take it. So if you didn't make enough money, you literally stopped.
Mm.
And in old age, you surely stopped. I'll always be grateful to Roosevelt, even though at the time he introduced Social Security and unemployment insurance and all of those benefits. They called him a communist. That was unheard of. You don't give people money without working, and they're losers, they're thieves, they're taking money for nothing. Some of the rich guys say, well, why are you taking money I worked for and take it from me and give it to some guy that's too lazy to go to work, not realizing they may not be able to have a job. So they don't have any empathy because they're not in their shoes. Till you're in somebody's shoes, you don't know.
But you see, unless you have gratefulness and unless you have appreciation, you can't be happy.
So I had the worst beginning. It was terrible.
But you wouldn't trade that,
and
would
I
you?
was I traded.
You would in a second like that.
Less than a second. I had a miserable childhood.
But it gave you a foundation
But-
later.
No, but it was in response to that I kept working hard, even when I made a lot of money, and I very cautious about spending it. Like I was going to take a cab uptown for a meeting, and then I'd start walking till I found a cab, and after I walked about 15 blocks and didn't get a cab, I figured, I'd save the cab fare and walk the rest of the way, because I was very cognizant of the value of money. And so I just had a very unhappy childhood. I dropped out of school at 14
I remember.
because I got beat up by I went to parochial school, and my rabbis were newly arrived. I was born in 29. That's when the crash came. You know, it was a very bad year for my father and for the economy. For my father, because I was born, I was a failed abortion. I was 14. I was still trying to abort me, my parents. No, I watched my father struggle, work hard, and never make it. And then when he invested some of his savings with others, trying to get a leg up, almost in every case he lost everything he put with other people. So you learn a lot of lessons, but also the desire to distance myself from that low life poverty, that having nothing,
But let's give
was a
people some
driver.
lessons on happiness. They're watching to hear some lessons that we can teach them on happiness.
No, so I'm saying, what happened in the course of changing my life, of my own volition, as bad as I was treated in school by these people who from Europe who were newly arrived during the height of the Depression. There was 25% unemployment. I was trying to find things that could make me happy, and I started to read books. Dale Carnegie wrote books, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, which is inspirational, and one of the things that's dealt with and mentioned and reiterated in his books. And then Bishop Steen, a Catholic minister, I think he was a bishop, wrote a book, The Power of Positive Thinking. I always think it's Bishop Sheen, but it's Bishop Steen. And all of these kind of books that were uplifting.
You dove into the learning. You dove in.
Well, also ideas how to make yourself happy, how to stop worrying, start living.
What's one idea from this book, Happiness Guaranteed, that you can share with the audience that really resonated with people and maybe people use to make a difference in their life?
I'll tell you one thing that bothers me these days is that everybody watches, they watch Instagram, everybody looks so happy. TikTok, everybody acts like so happy. There is a story in the book. I mean, there was a little girl, she was like 12 years old. She was on Instagram. She had a few 100,000 followers. She was always smiling and telling everyone how happy she was. And then she committed suicide. And her parents said, what do you mean she was so happy? Because it's an act. And, it's sad because the people watching it all fall for it. Everybody thinks that one's so happy, that one's so happy, that one's. Why aren't I so happy? And it's a big problem today. And today you have to really, as I've said, you have to work to make yourself happy.
Absolutely.
And there are ways we wrote about in the book. We wrote about neuroplasticity in the book.
Tell me about that, because I interviewed a lot of brain surgeons who talked about the plasticity of the brain at a young age. And
so it says there's millions of neurons and pathways. Each thought. Here, I'll read it to you. Each thought is associated with one of many pathways. And as we repeat a thought process, like if we decide we're going to be generous and we keep being generous, that pathway opens up. If you decide you're going to be jealous or angry, that pathway gets narrower. And then when you experience something, your brain automatically goes to the wider pathway. So if you're used to being, like a good person, you're going to come out and do the right thing. If you're used to being an angry person who's looking at everyone else and saying, what do they have? What do they have? Why is this happening to me? Well, it's an attitude.
That's huge. Years ago, this was a turning point for me when I started, I was driving a lot. I was selling on the road, so I was in my car a lot. So I figured it's a university on wheels. I can start getting tapes, just put it in. And I got this tape. It was Earl Nightingale wrote this program called The Strangest Secret. 6 words changed my life. And what you just said is basically the whole focus on that. He said, these 6 words: you become what you think about.
Right.
That's it.
That's how my father
You
started.
become what you think about. And I started to realize, so if I can pick and choose what I think about, I can become that what I think about. How does that work? And I remember, it's not just what you read, and it's who you surround yourself with. It's your environment. And I think, my youngest son said to me, I'm reading this book about, what we're doing with the phones and all much time we're spending on it. And just saying, we're just up close like that so long that it's deteriorating our imagination, our thinking. He goes, Dad, why don't you just try like to go to dinners without your phone, or just to shut it off? Just try for a day. And I did. And it was weird. At first, the first thing you start doing is you go, wait. Oh, no, I don't have to. I was going to Google that. You start, because it's giving you all the answers, and we don't think anymore, and I think it was really a refreshing moment. My son teaching me, which is the best thing in the world. You give them the best life, you give them roots, you give them wings, and they go. And hopefully now my kids now are, they're my mentors. They go out and enrich themselves so much with the most information, and I look up to them. And when he said that, it made me realize how much we depend on that phone, which is dangerous in a lot of ways.
That's true. That's why we love Shabbos. When we turn off the phones, and we just.
Yeah, that's one of the great things. Even the Pope wrote. I don't know if did I send you that? The Pope praises the Jewish Sabbath. It's unusual
because of family time together with
family time. Stop all the mundane things. One of the great things is you don't take phone calls, so you don't get bad news. You don't have to. I remember my father-in-law owned a small house in Staten Island, and one Saturday the phone was ringing all day, and he wouldn't answer it. It doesn't matter what it is. And then Saturday night he found out that the boiler blew up. So he had to take care of it. But meanwhile, it didn't ruin his whole weekend taking care of something that needed to be taken care of. And, it's unfortunate that somebody had to be without the service for a while. But it changes the nature of your life,
right.
So nothing is that important. On the other hand, you're allowed to do anything. You're allowed to violate any rule to help somebody else's health. If somebody's in an accident and you've got to drive over or drive them to a hospital, you're allowed to break. If the doctor says
in life,
you got to have bacon 3 times a day to save your life.
I don't know about that one, Morty.
Yeah, no, you're allowed to, but it won't happen.
But you're allowed.
I don't know how much it's going to help you in your life.
Anyway,
so tell me.
Quotes like you're saying are great. Like the happiest people don't have the best of everything; they just make the best of everything. Right. And the idea that life is a journey. Everybody says, "When I get here, when I get there, when I accomplish this, then I'll be happy." You have to. You have to know that every day is a journey, and you have to enjoy every single
second.
day.
One of the best teachings that I, till this day, benefit so greatly from, and at the time, my father-in-law used to try to grab me on Saturday and teach me something called Pirkei Avos.
What's that?
Pirkei Avos. It's not long. It's maybe
Ethics of the Fathers.
It's wisdom from our sages, and it says, "Who is happy?" So it takes a lot of pages. It says, "One who is happy, not happy. One who was satisfied with his allocation, with
his lot,
with his
lot."
Yeah. Because if you're happy with what you got, that's that. There's billionaires that are miserable because somebody got more than them.
The greatest thing when you were you I don't know if you came on my radio show years ago, my TV show Diamonds in the Rough, and he said something. He was talking about how you made hundreds of people millionaires, and he said to me on my show, he said, "You wouldn't believe how many are miserable."
Right.
And I was
he
like,
always had a thing hanging
I,
in his
I,
office and in our house, a list of all the top the millionaires and billionaires. Well, at that
mhm,
time, there weren't so many billionaires, but the
mhm.
millionaires. And it said in the end, like each one, and it showed this one's, child committed suicide. This
Mm.
one, his wife left him. This you can't,
That
money
was the
isn't the
good
one.
news.
What? Right?
Yeah. See, that's what happiness
You can't count
guaranteed.
on
You're
money to make you.
guaranteeing happiness, right?
Yeah,
Or you just give them their misery back, right? That's the deal.
right.
Or their money back, right?
You know what? People want their misery back too.
But the funny thing is, then a quote came up, and it was, success without happiness is the worst type of failure. Here you have everything and you're
Yeah,
not happy.
absolutely.
I mean, you see people who have nothing and are happy. So not that, money's a byproduct. Yes, it's motivating. But internally, what is it? Can you
Tell
sleep
them
at
what
night?
Rabbi Teller, what Hanov Teller says. The only happy people.
The only happy people I know are the people I don't know. It has to do with your experience and how you deal with it.
What are some ideas from this book? Because I know there's a lot of them in there. I mean, I just love
The first
the
thing,
jokes too are great, the
the most
humor, but
the most important thing you started to touch on is we punish ourselves more than anybody else. We're with ourselves 24/7,
Mhm.
all of our lives. So the one best able to make you happy or me happy is ourselves,
Mhm.
and best able to make ourselves miserable. So if we start to let our mind wander, and for some reason, human beings always think back to what could have been, should have been. Wow, what a bad break! I lost this money. I had this girlfriend, and she went off with it. We go back to the things that hurt us, and delve on it. Focus on it when that's the worst thing you do. So I always say on my podcast every week that the minute you go that way, the minute your mind starts to focus on negatives, don't spend any time there. If you went on a trip to a vacation destination and you had a miserable time, you'd never go back. And here you're always going back to the things that
right.
hurt you,
Mhm.
A lot of things remind you. You see somebody that made it and was rich now, and you said, gee, I was almost there, but I lost on this deal or something. We make ourselves miserable.
Mhm.
So I say, instantly shift gears. I said, whatever it takes, do some action.
Yes.
Action is the answer. So I say, call your best friend and visit with them, go out to lunch with them,
Right.
have a good meal, uh, read a good book that you know is a good book that excites you or you heard about, watch a movie, uh, do fun things. I
Mhm.
said, for me, what always worked was the minute I get miserable, I
You
shift
dive into
gears.
work.
No, I don't
I
dive
read
in.
that. I'm sorry.
I
Okay.
dive into work. I stay busy. That's
Yes. Mhm. Right.
if you stay busy, it's hard to be, you know. No, so I'm saying, I always tell them, I run down to my kitchen, to my freezer. I take out a quart of Haagen-Dazs chocolate ice cream. I take out a ton of whipped cream, pile it on, chopped nuts, cherry on top, maybe some chocolate syrup, and just preparing it. Even before I eat it, I'm
You got
so
rid of it.
excited.
Yes.
I'm happy
Okay.
and joyful. And then when I start to take a bite out of it, all my misery goes away. So shift gears, whatever does it for
That's a
you.
good point.
And be your best friend. Like if your best friend were hurting, if you lost somebody valuable, you don't do. Solomon had this advice. Say this too shall pass. So it's only temporary,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't help you. So go there and figure out things that will get them off this momentary thing. So
Right.
it's hard to do if somebody had a very bad loss. But what I do is I say to him, Frank, remember, there's a miserable time, but you and I have a date in October to go skiing in Vermont. And remember the great time we had last year? Get him off this momentary thing,
Right.
and that's the best thing.
Yes.
The other thing I started to say is if you stay busy, it's very hard for you to, at things that are, I remember one time I was very negligent as a young man after I was even married. So I had about 40 tickets that I hadn't paid, speeding, passing lights, everything. And I was getting letters threatening from the Justice Department or the district attorney or motor vehicle bureau that coming to attach everything I have or put me in jail. And I was so miserable. I was overwhelmed by it. And one time my brother-in-law comes along and says, "You know what, Morty, just start by taking care of one. Take care of the first. Once I started to take care of the first ticket, I was dealing with a problem instead of just focusing on it. So get to action is the
Action
best.
is everything.
The first step is the hardest.
Yeah.
Once you start thinking about having to do something kills you, but once you start doing it, you get into it. It's much easier.
Right. It's the initial start, getting the momentum. Learning.
The other thing, guys, that could get you off that momentary depression is make love.
We couldn't do a program without.
No, you make love. I'm not saying,
Morty, there was a saying that I hold dear to my heart. We learn from our actions and then we act from our learning. Both together are really strong, but one without the other suffers. Like, somebody who, you wonder why somebody who's in jeopardy, they should be billionaires. They know so much information, but knowledge is only one thing that you retain and memorize. It's the action that teaches us everything, to put it into action, to see if it works. And I find that, whether you're going through difficulty, whatever it is that is the best thing in the world is whether it's, a hobby, an interest, but something to dive in and keep your mind busy, focused on something you enjoy and something positive. I was selling copiers out of college, out of a station wagon for a company. And I had like 5-6 appointments during the day that I'd be running to this part of Somerville, New Jersey. Then I'd go over here and I get tickets. So I paid my tickets, but but I lost my license.
Don't worry, I'm not going to report you.
No, I lost my license, and I come back to the sales team. They're all cracking. Farber lost his license. He's not going to sell it. So the next day,
I lost my license too.
You did? Well, here's what I did.
No,
Marty.
my career, because I was selling door to door and driving to Staten Island in my car, and for 6 months that I wasn't allowed to drive, I was driving my car. Ooh. So that was terrible.
You don't tell it.
No,
don't tell it.
I won't tell. We're on a show here. So, but what happened was my parents' friend's son, I hired to drive me so I can go do my demonstrations and everything. And I remember coming back on Thursday, I think it was sales meetings. So I went out and I bought him a limo driver cap, kind of like what you're wearing. And I had him put it on. And we had company station wagons. So I sat in the back of the station wagon. I had him put on the hat. This is a guy I hired to drive me around. And it was one of my best months ever selling. He helped me with demos and stuff. But we pull up. He'd come out with my briefcase. We actually had briefcases. Then he hands Mr. Farber your briefcase. I had told him to do all this stuff. So the sales force is there. Watch what's fun. Farber got his own limo driver and they're cracking up. So you gotta enjoy it. You gotta make fun of some things because you don't realize how fast life goes and the show goes, you don't realize, and you just got to really take advantage of, I think, problems, difficulties. There's so much in there, so much to get out of that. And success happens and you're blinded. You don't learn from that as much as you do from those setbacks.
So let me tell you
But the first thing and most important, excuse me, 1 second, is decide that you're in charge. You're the boss. You control what you think.
If it's to be, it's up to me.
You
have
control.
to decide to be happy.
You control what you're the boss. And if you let yourself focus on negatives, you're going to be miserable. Yeah. So you make up your mind. I'm going to be happy. I'm not going to depend. If you depend on others, they're too busy to make themselves happy.
And also, you can't look for perfection. I heard a lovely story that somebody told me. That they said, when God created the world, he looked at the world and he said, it's good, right? Every day he looked and he said, it's good. Except there were problems, right? The sun and moon were fighting, the moon was complaining, why is the sun so big? They had, they were originally the same size. God had to make the moon smaller. God originally had two very big fish that were taking over the world. So he had to put them away till Messiah comes. And then he created the tree. These are only examples, but he created the tree that the bark was sweet and the fruit the tree was sweet, and there were complaints. So all these were complaints against God, and God was still saying, I looked at it, it's good, which just shows God believed it's good even if it's not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to take that about life. Life isn't going to be perfect. You have moments of perfection, but it's not, you're not looking for perfect. You have to make yourself feel that that moment is perfect. You have to feel that that moment that is imperfect can be better, and feel like, what do I have to do? Go get ice cream and whipped cream. It works for me. Always works for me. That's why I look like what I look like.
You look amazing.
But on the other hand, you have to, and they say you have to really make sure there are enough positives. Like in a day, it has to be the negative to the positive feelings have to be 3 to 1, 3 times as many positives. In marriage, it has to be 5 to 1. They say 2 to 1, you're okay, but like that's, you're just floating, so you have to force yourself. And one of my favorite stories, and I'll tell it very fast because I know we're running out of time, is that God went to, I always tell the story because I live by it. God went to the angels and said, I want to hide happiness. Where should I put it? And one angel said, let's put it in the heavens so nobody could really reach it, and another angel said, let's put it deep in the ocean so no one can find it, and everyone said, where should we put it? And in the end, God said, where I'm going to put it? I'm going to put it deep inside a person. So they have to look for it, and they could find it. It's there right inside you.
Sometimes that's the last place they
Right.
look. Right.
And we don't, but we really have to. We have to look inside ourselves. We have to look at our family, because sadly, most people, when they're down, they're angry, they turn against their family to want to, like, I don't want to bother them, or I don't want to hurt them, but the family is the best thing you have. We've learned it. It's the strongest connection you can have, and it gets you through most things in life.
Well, both of you practice what you preach. And
I
in
don't
this
wanna-
book, I
don't want to preach religion, but to the extent that you have a faith in God, it helps.
Well,
You
absolutely.
can, if you weren't brought up that way, it's hard to adopt. But my kids, my 4 daughters, and they conveyed that to their offspring. So there's 100 people out there of the Jewish faith that have this, and there's nothing that ever happens negative that they don't say, if God did it. I'm always complaining. Why is God so mean? Why does he create a Hitler and to help him? Why does he create wars and so forth? And in their mind, if God did it, there's a reason. And that gives them a lift. So that it's very important to be the boss. I get guys that come to my office and they have a drawl, Southerners. And they start to talk, and I can't wait for them to finish. Like most people can't wait to show how smart they are. But these guys, I finish their sentences for them. And that's what everybody's busy trying to make a big impression, when if they would just be good listeners, they would be much better off and much better liked.
But also, we believe everything that happens is for the best, So
and then
if you feel that way, like you take the negative and you turn it around, you say, this looks terrible. We always say it's like a tapestry. We are seeing, the underside of the tapestry. I mean, I used to do tapestry, and like the back side of it is disgusting. It's knotty, it's horrible. And if you look at that side, it's horrendous. But if you look at the front, you're seeing a spectacular tapestry. God is seeing the front. We are seeing the back. And when you have faith and you believe that that's how the world is created, and God, whatever God does is for your best, even though you can't see it at this point, then you have a whole different attitude towards things, and you look at each thing.
It's not real.
Remember, we
Positive.
started out with "You become what you think about." I recommend everybody read that book and think about everything in there, because even the negative stuff about even, the glass is half empty, the glass is half full, and then Einstein said, I think it was Einstein. No, it's who was it? Was it George Carlin said the glass is not big enough? I mean, there's different ways to look at things, but both of you remind me of a story that I heard in Canada. It was a psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever, they were interviewing. This father was an alcoholic, okay, and had two sons. One son was a very successful business person, and the other son was in the streets, alcoholic. And the psychiatrist interviewed them and spent time with them and asked them both the same question: how did you end up this way? And both of them had the same answer: what would you expect with a father like mine? Right? Because so both of them, could have been successful or in the gutter, but the one who the business decided to take it a different way. I'm going to learn from that. So I don't know. I find out that what you talk about in this book is just, this stuff can be written and read 200 years from now.
Not only that, it's got humor, it's got jokes, it's got so it's easy. It's not just boring lessons.
No, I saw that. Yeah.
So that it's fun to go through, and while you're going through it, you get an education on how to be happier. There's a guy at
Why did you write this book,
Harvard,
both of you? Oh, yeah.
There's a guy at Harvard, an Israeli, who has a course on happiness, the most popular course at Harvard. You can't even register for it. It's always open.
Sold out.
Shachar.
Yeah, what?
Maybe Shachar?
I don't know, yeah. But that's unbelievable, because people are searching for happiness, and it's there right for them if they take control. So, a father has, it shows you, it's all in the attitude. A father has two sons, right? One son is always miserable, always hopeless. The glass is always half empty. The other son is just the opposite. No matter how bad things are, he always sees it as good.
Mm-hmm.
It's fabulous. It's going to be great. So one time he says on Christmas morning or Hanukkah morning, he says, I'm going to make the one that's miserable happy with the gifts that I give him, and the one that's always upbeat, I'm going to calm him down, so I shouldn't be so full of joy and excitement. So he fills up the kid, the boy was always miserable, with every toy that he could think of, the best toys, the best computers, the best electronic games, everything. Fills up the room. The other kid he fills up with horse manure, up to his chin. He comes in the morning, and he stands at the door where he gave the son who's always miserable, and he hears him whimpering. So he can't understand. He opens the door. He says, "What's wrong? You got every beautiful gift, He says, "Yeah, I know, but I had these kind of things before. They get old and they get broke." And he was miserable, because he anticipated the outcome. Toys break, they disappear. So he said, goes to the other son where the kid's up to hearing and horse manure, and he hears him at the door singing, and he opens the door, and the kid's there with a shovel, with a shovel, removing the pile of horse manure. He says, "What's with you? What are you so happy about?" He says, "If there's all this horse manure here, there's got to be a pony on here, a pony on there somewhere." See, it's all attitude.
Well, you said it best. He said some people don't have the best life, but make the best out of what they got. Absolutely.
Attitude is
everything.
Attitude is gratitude.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So you wrote together this book.
No, my father wrote it for 10 years.
Right, and
he was sending it to us to read, and we thought it would never get finished. And he was great. It was great stuff. But,
I remember.
And then I took it over. But then my sister said, "No, nobody wants to read a whole book on happiness. Make it 365 days." So we didn't have anywhere near that. We had about, 150 or 175. So
And
to
she's a
rest.
doer. She's a closer.
So
I'd still be.
I see that.
I'd still be writing it because I always think there's more to be found out. Guy says to God, God, let me win the lottery. I'll give 50% of what I win to charity.
I love that.
You know the story.
I can hear it again. It's a great story.
So the lottery passes, he doesn't win. So next time lottery comes up, he says, God, let me win the lottery. I'll give 2/3 to charity. Doesn't win. Next time the lotteries come up, God, let me win the lottery. I'll give 90% to charity. And all of a sudden you hear a voice from heaven, Morty, do me a favor, buy a ticket.
Buy a lottery.
You gotta give God a little help. People think it's so. My saying, who's who, when I first started early in my career, who's who came to see me and said, what's your motto for success? And I say, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Right.
And that's the secret.
Right.
We
talked about that.
Yeah, you got to at least buy a ticket.
One of my favorite quotes that goes along with that is hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But God forbid the talented guy works hard. That's the whole thing. A lot of people don't realize how they can make up for it 3 hours getting up earlier.
My father always said to us, there's always room at the top. People don't.
Yeah, even when it was 25% unemployment
Sure.
during the Great Depression, top salesmen could get a job.
That's right.
Because they needed sales, or that there were jobs open for top CEOs. There's always room at the top.
They do have a saying that I researched this, that they did a study on centurions, people who live over 100. And, some of them drank, smoked, didn't eat well. The point that they brought, we're doing it right now, but you're not 100. I know that. You're much younger.
No, but
what are you, 52? I know.
The worst junk food. My favorite foods were hot dogs, pastrami, corned beef.
Wait, please don't tell people to eat that stuff. Okay.
Wait,
listen.
And also ice cream.
Okay, we got it.
All right. So basically, the common denominator was, yes, it was that they were engaged in life. One guy's 103 and planting apple trees that take 20 years or stuff to grow. They don't see themselves. And then you go around the blue zones and you see people who are hiking up mountains and they're just get up at 4 a.m. and the guy's 104. Going out in a field and working, and they're engaged, and that's what the body needs. Because once you, even the smallest life, an amoeba stops moving, it dies. I feel like the same way that, I might be, people tell me, oh, I'm going to Florida, I'm retired, it's great, I'm, living the life, heaven. And here's what I found over the years. I got calls, and I got calls from a big portion of them, what are you doing? What's going on? I wonder if you have any, and they ask for openings because they're losing their mind. Okay. The other half, I call up and they're not there anymore. Their wife sends a text back. I feel like, and look, there's many people who are enjoying themselves doing that, retired, happy, whatever. But I feel like we're made to give back, to do something. And once we disengage, I think the body has a message and it shuts down. When we're not challenged, when we don't have stress, when you don't have problems. Now I'll tell you something. Here's a story. You know what gout is, right? That's the best thing that ever happened to me. The best.
Yeah.
Gout. The most painful thing in the world.
I should wish to get gout.
No. You don't. You don't want that.
That's the best thing.
I had a craving for shellfish. I love a beer. I had a craving for sardines. I ate everything that had high purines in it that created, a situation where glass-like particles settle to your joints and creates inflammation that's out of control. People would say it's one of the biggest pains, even worse than childbirth. I'm not going to argue with that. Okay. But I will say that it changed my mind to understand and do research like I've never done on what the human body can do and how powerful it is to heal itself, and the mind and what we eat and how we move and how we think impacts our life that way. So, I find that pain is the greatest thing in the world. I'm serious. If day without pain, then I'm worried. Then I feel like something's wrong. I'm not working hard enough, or I'm not challenging myself enough, or I'm not exploring enough.
You know,
And
there's a joke. I'll just tell you very fast. There's a joke. A man goes to a doctor, and the doctor says, you know, you want to live long, you know, you got to stop drinking and smoking and fooling around. And the guy says, what are you talking? My grandfather never smoked, never drank, never fooled around, and he died at 50. And the doctor says, yeah, that's because he didn't do it for long enough.
You know that.
But
I just want to finish with one thing.
sure.
I don't want to get gout though.
No. I'm not. I'm saying to you.
No, you said it's the best thing that ever happened to you.
It did.
I know.
There's a.
I don't want.
But I don't want to get. No. I'm not recommending it for anybody.
No, but the best line that tells you how to treat life is a young man walks up to Thomas Edison and says, "How come you failed 1,000 times, and you never gave up?" He said, Thomas Edison said, "Who told you I failed 1,000 times?" He said, "Everybody knows that. They always say that. You know, Thomas Edison never gave up. He failed 1,000 times." He says, "Young man, I'd never failed once." He says, "So why does everybody say that about you? You failed at that." He says, "They don't realize 1,000 times I succeeded in finding out what didn't work."
Right.
That's the attitude.
Failure is
so
the
you
best
got to
teacher.
take, not failure, to derive happiness even from negatives.
Yes.
You know, you find out it doesn't work, you throw in the experiment.
Mm-hmm.
But he says, I found that it's useful because each time I got closer to the answer.
Closer to the answer, yeah.
And that's the way it is. And then you should carry that on your face, because mood and smiling is contagious, and laughing is contagious. Mm-hmm. And even an actress that plays a role and has a crying part, she'll tell you that she gets depressed because she's imposing that mood on herself.
An emotional state. Right?
And if she laughs, she's got to laugh in the part, she's going to be happy.
Right.
So laugh and smile and spread that, and it'll be contagious, and it'll bring more happiness to the world. And that's my goal, to make everybody happier. Not, as they say, you know, peace through strength. That's bull. We're the strongest country in the world. We're in more wars than any country in the world. Our number one expenditure is a waste, defense spending. When you build highways and roads and tunnels and schools and libraries and things that last, that's a good expenditure. So even if you got debt, you got assets to show on the books for the debt. When you build defense equipment, the minute it's built, it's wasted, because it's useless unless you use it to blow up other people, and you can't wait and the generals can't wait to use it. So just smile, spread that smile throughout
Also,
the world.
use your negatives as your positives.
Oh, absolutely.
If you're looking at something that happened to you that was horrible, and you're saying the good that came out of it. So every time you look at something, you know, so they say a person can break a leg and can walk around complaining, or he could walk around saying, "Look at all the people who are helping me, you know, get up." You have to just, it's your focus.
He's going to get hired by the pharmaceutical
Right.
companies that make a treatment for gout. Because gout
is great.
Everyone.
Look, that's a whole nother show. If you want me to get into that, I'll talk about. Talk about dedication. You got to be committed, and you got to be so dedicated and focused, and
you should be committed.
You
for
better
talking
wrap it
about
up,
that.
Because he's like.
Okay.
Well,
anyway, it's been great being with you. I'll see you next Wednesday at 6:30. God bless you. Have a great day. Have a great every day of your life. Each day should be even better than the day before, till you're 120. And after that, we'll negotiate for more. Bye.
Thank you.